Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. So welcome back to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. We are talking about where to find famous artists in the churches of France. Is it Paris or France?
Paris.
In Paris. All right. So we're talking about churches where you can find some famous artworks. And I really feel like churches are a museum in Paris, a free museum, because there is so much beautiful work inside them. So Claudine's going to give us some secrets on where to find them exactly in today's episode.
Well, actually, before there were museums, there were the churches. So the churches, in a way, are the very first museums.
Ah, that's so true. Because whenever I walk around a church, I'm like, this is like a museum.
Yeah, well, I mean, Notre Dame, the first stone was laid on this day in 1163. And so in 1345 is basically when the art started showing up in Notre Dame de Paris, and the Louvre did not open until 1793.
What? Okay, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So, and the church had a lot of money. So the Catholic Church had a immense amount of money. I mean, I think they still do now. And so they were able to, pay for these things, and wealthy donors wanting to, get a little edge in on, I guess, making their way to the pearly gates. So they were donating these great pieces of art that ended up going to the churches. And a lot of times they were painted into the painting as well.
Smart move.
But, we've talked about, in some of the churches before, in just talking about different artists and stuff, but the churches, a lot of people were, they couldn't read, they were illiterate. And so for the way for them to learn the stories of the Bible were through the artwork, the stained glass windows, and the facades of the churches. So if you look at like Notre Dame and some of these other churches, they have these amazing doors. And up above them, they will have sculptures of the Last Judgment, and they have, the story of Saint Anne and the story of the Virgin Mary. And so you could, if you really look at these, you can actually, if you know enough about what those stories were from the Bible, you could figure it out by looking at the facades sometimes of these churches.
Don't even have to know how to read.
No. So it is pretty amazing. I mean, I'm not Catholic. And so I took this online course through Yale University to learn about basically the Gothic cathedrals. And so, because I wanted to learn what every single thing was on the facade of Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And it's incredibly interesting. And like, once we'll do one down the road, we'll probably do like two of them about Notre Dame, and how there's also some like little secret things kind of put into, like secret little messages.
Oh, we want the secrets. Give us the secret
messages. But back to the artwork. So you could actually skip museums, which God forbid, please don't do that. But if you have limited amount of time, you could go into some of the churches in Paris for absolutely free and see some of the same artists that you would find hanging in the Louvre.
I mean, that's why we're here today, so we can learn about these things.
Exactly. So one of my favorites, of course, is Eugène Delacroix. And I love him, and I love Liberty Leading the People, his very famous painting, but I love everything he's ever done. And Delacroix had this big belief, and he tried to turn a bunch of the other artists into it, that his idea was for you to be remembered. And think again, this is in the 19th century. For you to be remembered, you would need to do these large scale paintings in public spaces. So he ended up doing stuff in like the Palais Bourbon and the Palais de Luxembourg and Hotel de Ville, all of these other big structures in Paris that were going to be open to the public. And so he thought that was a way for you to be remembered after you're gone. So he was commissioned early on to do stuff for churches. And the first one that he was commissioned for in 1824, the prefect of the Seine, the Comte de Chabrol, he asked him to do a religious painting for the Church de Saint Denis. And so he ended up doing a picture of the Pietà, which is a very, very famous painting that has been done over time. Of course, you have Michelangelo's Pietà, which is, Mary holding Christ as he's taken off of the cross. So it's a very, very famous image, but he did it just a tiny little bit different because he did it so that it was, it also had the scene of people that were around him. So it was going to go into the Saint Denis de Saint-Sacrament Church. Artist Robert Fleury was actually asked to do it, and he ended up not having the time. He couldn't do it. So Delacroix was then asked. At the time, he was also doing the Senate and in the Palais de Luxembourg and the Bibliothèque of the Palais Bourbon, which I've luckily gone in to see both of those. So I'll have to do some of those photos on my website. But he started this in, 1844. He worked on it in only 17 days. He had it finished.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, when you see this, I mean, it's not a small painting. But he usually, this painting, as I said, it's usually what they would just call a group when it's any more than just one person. So usually it's just two. He ended up putting multiple people in there. He has Saint Jean, who was wearing red, Saint Joseph, who's also in there, Marie, who was the mother of Joseph and Jean. Mary Magdalene, of course, is there, and the Virgin Mary is holding him as, he has been taken off the cross. So it was actually inspired by a painting you could find inside the Louvre by Florentino. It's hanging in the Grand Gallery of the Louvre. And the colors that he used in it are very Rubens and Tintoretto, which we see some of those paintings if you go around to some of the churches as well. Baudelaire had said that this masterpiece leaves you with a spirit and deep furrow of melancholy, because the Pietà is just kind of an emotional, it's very sad. Here she is holding her son, and she's obviously very sad. So the image itself, always religious or not, it just is already kind of an emotional thing to look at. But Delacroix was so good at his use of colors and the way that he, because he was like the leader of the Romantic period. He just is even better equipped to do that exact scene.
Your favorite, your lover.
I love him. But the other one that he did, which is in another church that a lot of people have probably gone into, is the Saint Paul Saint Louis church that is there on Rue Saint Antoine, just right there, kind of at the beginning of the Marais. It's a fantastic, beautiful church to go inside and see. And if you go in and you stay to the left and you go kind of around it's right about the transept. If you look up on the wall, there is the painting that he did that was of Jesus in the Garden of Olives. And so what this was, it was just right after the Last Supper. He goes into the garden at the foot of Mount Olives, and he takes with him St. Peter, James, and Jean. And he at this point knows that somebody, there's Judas, and he knows somebody. It's like he knows he's going to die soon. So he goes into the forest. And so he actually painted the scene of him. Jesus is laying down and kind of has his hands up and looking away. And there's three angels looking down on him, just very distraught and sad. But if you look in the left-hand corner, you see the men with like their torches that were just coming to get him. So again, he doesn't, Delacroix didn't really paint and nobody really did, painted happy scenes of people like happily sitting in the garden having a picnic.
Yeah, there's no happy stuff going on.
There's not a lot of happy stuff, but he actually wasn't very religious at all. So he would actually get these things from reading not reading scripture, but like reading other accounts and things written about the stories. And so that's where he would kind of get, but he's, does this amazing job capturing these stories, even though he wasn't really religious at all. As back then, you were either a historical painter or a religious painter or allegories or portraits. Those were kind of the big
Your
things.
choices.
Yeah. So you kind of had to pick one of those. But it's really amazing. This was displayed in 1827 at the Salons alongside another one of his very famous paintings is in the Louvre, which was the death of Saint Nicolas. And it's a very, that one definitely got the attention because it's these women that are getting like killed. And this, this man is on this great big bed. And then all these other people, it's just this horrible scene. And so, he had that and it was freaking everybody out. And then he had this other one of Jesus.
Perfect.
Yeah. But when it comes to Delacroix, there is one place that you have to go see him, that you can see 3 of his pieces. And that is, of course, in the Église Saint-Sulpice. That is over in Saint-Germain in the 6th on Rue Saint-Sulpice. But in that church, you go in there and he was commissioned. This was towards the end of his life in 1849. And he was basically given free reign over whatever he wanted to do. It just had to include angels. So because it was going to be placed into the chapel of the Saint Angels, and it was he basically said, they said you could do whatever you want. This is also when he moved to Place de Furstenberg. While he was in the midst of doing this, he moved over there so he would be closer because he was walking over there each day to the church. This was towards the end of his life. He wasn't feeling so great those last few years. And he actually ended up sending a letter to a friend of his at the time saying, "This is going to kill me." And he died less than 2 years after he had finally completed this. But there's 3 paintings there. 2 of them on the wall, the one on the ceiling. The one on the left is Jacob wrestling an angel. There's also Heliodorus driven from the temple, and up above you is the wonderful Saint Michel defeating. And so that's such a famous scene. You see it, the statue. There's a statue of Saint Michel on the top of Sacré-Cœur, of course, at Mont Saint Michel. But this was this last religious pieces that he did. He started them in 1854. His assistant Pierre Andrew took a long time to prepare the walls because the 2 on the walls were going to be painted directly onto the walls, but it was going to be done a little bit different than most frescoes. He did it using a format of paint, pigmented paint with linseed oil and wax. And what this did is it created something where the colors would be deeper. And because he did it in that way, they've lasted much longer than regular frescoes.
Oh, that's so cool. It's crazy what they could do back then with such little resources.
I know. And when you watch, I've watched documentaries about paint where and we've talked about some of the different women painters over time and how they would actually make paint from the flowers in their garden.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even have the first clue how to do that.
I know how they even figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing to see what they did. But they treated the walls first, and they did it. It took a long time to do that. The ceiling was done on canvas, and then it was attached later with this special glue that had lead in it.
Oh, perfect. Lots of lead paint.
Yeah, so don't go up there and pick at it and breathe it in, which is impossible to get up there. But the pieces are amazing. The first one, he chose all of them that kind of deal with a little bit of struggle. He worked on these after he had already completed the Galerie des Salons in the Louvre. He had always wanted to be shown in the Louvre, have his paintings there, but the rule was always that you couldn't hang in the Louvre until you'd been dead at least 10 years. And when they were redoing the Galerie des Salons, he was commissioned to do the center of the ceiling. So he ended up getting to see himself in the Louvre before he died. But he was doing that, and he was also doing the Salon de la Paix in the Hotel de Ville, which sadly was destroyed during the Commune. But he had done the sketches for Saint-Sulpice before that. And then it was after that he finally began it in 1854. It was finally finished and inaugurated at the end of July in 1861.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so it took quite a long time. It took, he did, there's up to 15 layers of paint in some of the places.
Oh,
What they do is they sketch the design on it, on the wall. And a lot of times the artists actually have like their, students or people studying with them. They're the ones that actually go up on the wall and, actually draw it out before Delacroix, comes in and paints it and finishes it. But he kept reworking some of the images. And so there's some places that there's 15 layers of paint.
He was doing a lot of reworking.
Lots of reworking. And it's on a wall. So you probably, a lot of times they have found, like recently they just found with the Night Watch, they're redoing up in Amsterdam, that there's different sketches below it. They could X-ray some of the canvases and they could see like the original intent that artist might have had.
Wow.
But I don't think you could do that on a wall.
No.
Who knows? Technology and science is amazing. So who knows?
Yeah.
The first one on the left is Jacob wrestling the angel. And Jacob was a son of Isaac. He was forced to exile to Mesopotamia after stealing his brother's birthright. And then as he was about to return back to Palestine, he was about to cross the river and basically was going to finally go to, answer to his family and return to them. But he's sitting there in the resting and this angel comes up and then the two of them start wrestling. It's supposed to also be kind of like, wrestling with our own, struggles within ourselves. But you see it, the angel has his big wings down in front of it, the painting there. And I'll have pictures of all of these on my website, but there is a little pile that has like, a spear and some arrows from a bow and arrow. And then there's like a straw hat that is much more contemporary than the scene of, what it should be, from the Bible, obviously very old. And it almost looks like a straw hat Van Gogh would wear. It's really interesting, but it said that he took 20 minutes to paint that part of the painting.
20 minutes?
20 minutes. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't even pencil sketch it in 20 minutes and it would not be good.
Exactly.
It's really interesting because it was amazing how we would use light. And so because there's a spear laying there on this pile and the spear is pointing towards Jacob and the angel. So when you look at it, your eye automatically goes to the angel, but then it's also kind of forced to go there because you see this spear that's pointing to it. So it's telling you to look there. And I've taken people when I give them tours of Saint-Germain and I take them in Saint-Sulpice, and usually to the right of it, there's actually like men on horses and the sheep, because those were what he was taking back to give to his family. Mm-hmm. You don't even notice those at first off to the side because he has this spear here pointing your vision to the other part of the painting.
I have to go see this for myself.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And then on the other wall is the Heliodot being chased from the temple. It's a story from 170 BC, and it's actually from this Greek book of the Macabres. And it was basically Heliodor. He was a prime minister, the king of Syria in 2 BC. He was sent to this temple in Jerusalem to rob it of its treasures. It's inspired by one of Titian's frescoes. It's in the Vatican, and then also very influenced from Peter Paul Rubens with the colors. But the colors of this is really amazing, and people always remark on it because it's got these robes. They're wearing these like robes of like turquoise and violet and this purple. It's really interesting because it's not colors you normally see.
Yeah.
Like that just isn't, you don't really see a lot of those colors in art unless it's like, flowers and they're very light colors, but these are like pretty vivid. The horse, there's a horse in there and his left hoof is kind of holding down on Heliodor, and these 2 angels are striking him. and you see like this box of jewels that it's emptied out. But it's really amazing. And this is the one that Delacroix signed, only one of the three that he signed. So some people think that was his favorite.
I love it. I want to go see all these. I'm looking at your website for directions.
But I mean, Saint-Sulpice in and of itself is amazing. And we need to do one that's just about a whole episode about Saint-Sulpice, because it's just a fascinating church. And then, of course, on the top, you have Saint Michel. That was in July 22nd, 1861 is when he wrote a note saying, "I believe I will die completing this project." The top of it, as I said, it was done on the canvas and then placed up onto the ceiling, because Michelangelo painted the ceiling of, laying on his back, doing that. And I can't even imagine how you would have to sit for that long, hundreds
on
of
your
days
back.
at a time. But Delacroix was able to do it on canvas, and then they placed it up. They restored him from 2015 to 2016. My first trip to Paris, one of the top things on my list was to go to Saint-Sulpice, and I walked to go see the Delacroix, and I walked in and was devastated when the entire chapel was covered up as they were restoring them. But then I came back a month later. I came back in November, and they had just reopened it. So I was very happy to see it. And I love anytime going in there, and there's benches in there, so you could just sit there and just look up and around. If you're sitting on the bench and you're looking out towards the church, there's around the archway, they also painted these angels on either corner. And the way that they're painted, they look like they're three-dimensional. And it looks like they're sculptures on the side. And it's just fascinating because they're just painted flat onto the archway.
It's so beautiful.
It's really cool. Another church to go see, and this is no stranger to large, big images, is a painting by Charles Le Brun. And Charles Le Brun was the first painter to Louis XIV. He was the one that Nicolas Fouquet hired to do Vaux le Vicomte. And then, Louis XIV went there to this big party and saw him and all of his masters that he had creating his chateau, and stole all of them. And of course, threw Fouquet in jail, and ended up taking all of them. And so Charles Le Brun was integral part of the decoration and the design of Versailles and many other places, including the Louvre, where he's done large canvases. So in the Église Saint Nicolas du Chardonnet in the 5th arrondissement is also where Charles Le Brun is laid to rest, and his family. He did this amazing painting there called the Martyrdom of Saint Jean, who was at the door, the Latin door. And this painting is very different from a lot of the other ones that I've done of that story, because most of the stories of Saint Jean is that he is seen in this big vat of oil where he was supposed to be killed. But Le Brun actually does it where he's actually being lifted up by ropes, and right before he's dumped into this vat of hot oil where they think he's going to kill him. You see a man down below blowing on, like stoking the flames, getting it even hotter and hotter. And then you see the executioner pointing to him from, a horse, like throw him in there. But the joke was on him because Saint Jean was lowered in there, and then he survived.
Yikes.
By a miracle.
Oh my God.
But it's really amazing. And most of the time, that story is definitely seen. So he's kind of doing, this was the before, but the before scene of it. Le Brun anguished over this for a long time, but he ended up, that was what he was going to do. And he always kind of was one that kind of always wanted to capture the drama of the moment. So, because they all with Delacroix, he had his take on religious art, and all of these guys wanted to put, these are stories that have been painted by many people over time. And so each one of them wants to do kind of their own little thing. During the Revolution, this painting was seized, and in 1959 is when it arrived here to this church. And it's right to the left of the door when you walk or walking out. If you look to the left, it's right up there. And it was perfect to be put there because that is where there is a bust and a little chapel that's dedicated to Charles Le Brun and his family where they're buried.
What?
Yeah,
Sounds
it's pretty
so
cool. And so you would never really know it. Like, no, people probably walk by this church all the time without thinking to go in. Anytime I come across, if I have time, I always go into a church in Paris, because you never know what cool thing you'll find in there. Another one that's really amazing to see. You do have to do a little work to see it because it's kind of closed off to the general public. Is you could actually see one of the amazing Tintoretto is La Seine, which is the Last Supper. It is in the church of Saint Francois Xavier. It's in the 7th. It's it's just a short walk from Les Invalides. It's like if you walk out from the dome and keep going straight, it's down there a ways on the right. It is in the wedding sacristy. They will show it to you. It's a good idea to call them ahead of time to ask if you could go in there to see them, because if it's obviously being used for a wedding or something that you can't. The Tintoretto reworked this image many times. His original piece that he did is in the Basilica in Venice. But this is different than, like we say, Da Vinci's Last Supper, where, it's straight ahead, it's very posed. This one's a little different. They're around a big square table and the perspective is kind of from the corner. So you feel like you're dropping into them in the middle of a conversation. So it's really interesting to see it that way. It was commissioned in 1559, and it was placed into the San Felice Church in Venice. In 1818, it actually disappeared for a while. It wasn't mentioned again until 1847, which then it was lost. Nobody knew where it went again. In 1865, it was purchased for Marie Caroline, the Duchess of Dubarry. And there's lots of dewberries out there. But she ended up giving it to this church in 1905.
Wow. So I want to know what happened to it in the in-between years.
Yeah. Sometimes it's funny. Like, I mean, there's some stories that date, who we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks that dates back to like the 5th century. And there's the amount of information you could find is amazing. Then there's stories from like the 17th and 18th century, and it's almost impossible to find any information.
Yeah, it's so random.
Yeah, it just kind of disappears. But it's a really, really, the outside of the church, it doesn't, it's not this big breathtaking, it's this Neo-Byzantine style church. It's still beautiful. Another one that's incredibly quiet. You would be hard pressed to find anybody in the church when you go other than a couple people working. So it's another one of those churches not many people go in, but it has this amazing treasure that is there in this room that is, you definitely want to go see. And I will put the information, all of this will be on my website, and even the number, so that if you want to go and see it, you could call ahead. You could always roll the dice and ask them. A lot of times if you, they're so happy to show you these things because they love it if someone's interested in it and even knows in advance enough to know that. They love to kind of, sometimes they'll, I've had people at churches take me into places people normally can't go just because they're so excited to share it.
That's so sweet. So yeah, talk about this with them. They'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, they do love to talk about it. There's, I've met some pretty fantastic people in churches. It's really cool. And then the last couple ones I wanted to talk about, and we could do probably 4 hours on the subject of the Les Maisons. And these were these astounding paintings that were created. They were in the 17th and 18th century. The Goldsmith Guild of Paris donated these large format paintings to Notre Dame de Paris. They were given every year on May 1st. That's the name, the Les Maisons. The Maisons, they were done between 1630 to 1707, with the exception of 2 years, 1683 and 1694. They did not do any paintings. The tradition goes back to the 15th century, when in 1449, the Goldsmith Guild decided to do something to donate to the church. And at first it started with these trees that were covered with ribbons. They were placed on the high altar for everybody to see. And then in the early 17th century, they decided that they should be paintings. So each May 1st, these paintings are donated. They would go and they'd be placed in front of the Chapel of the Virgin there in the back of the church. And then after that, it'd be hung on the pillar in the nave. And so I got this amazing book that I just about freaked out when I saw it in the Louvre bookstore. It was this book that was 125 euros. And I had to have it because I have been doing research on all of these paintings. I want to figure out where all of them are, the ones that have survived. And it's hard to find this information. And there was this huge book. It probably weighs like 7 pounds and it's about 2 inches thick. And it's like my pride and joy.
Drag it around with you.
Oh, I bought it and I was like, it probably cost me that much just to ship it back, but I absolutely love it. But they would hang these, and there's some pictures in the book, and I will post them on my website where you can see them hanging inside the church. The artists at the beginning, and when they first started doing these, different artists would basically do a sketch and have it presented to the members of the church, and the members of the church would decide which one they would choose. Later, when the Royal Academy of Artists was created, then each of the artists was chosen from the Royal Academy to do these. At the time, again, this was the very only way for artists really to be displayed. Again, were in the churches because this was before the major museums were starting. So this was the only way that they had for people to see them. And, we'll do another one another time about the artists. And it's really interesting because, most of them didn't even sign their paintings. A lot of them that did portraits because it wasn't about the artist. They could care less who Delacroix or Charles Le Brun was. It was, hey, this guy, we want you to paint this painting of, my rich wife.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't about the painter at all. It was about what they produced. And so, it started changing over time. And so this was a way for them to get their what they did out there to the public. And what better way to do this than in the church, who could afford to pay them for these pieces?
Well, we like to make money for our art.
Yes. Yeah, it's always been a struggling thing. But so they did these until the 18th century when Jean-Baptiste Colbert reformed a bunch of stuff. So the Goldsmith Guild didn't have the money, couldn't afford to pay the artists to do these. Of the 75 paintings that have been done, only 50 of them remain. 13 of them hung in Notre Dame de Paris up until the night of the fire. None of them were damaged because they were all, off to the side in the chapels. And so all of those were fine. Right now, they were taken out afterwards and they're at the Louvre. You can't see them on display, but they're probably getting a much, much needed cleaning because some of them, the way they were hung, and I would go in and try to get pictures of every single one of them. The way they were hung was sometimes very difficult to get a good look at them. And then when you did, sometimes they were so dirty from, hundreds of years of the candle soot that it was almost impossible to see it. So they're probably getting a much needed cleanup.
And then you want to go visit after the cleanup.
Yes, they definitely want to go see that. They're supposed to be on display in the Louvre, maybe as early as 2022. And I will definitely update everybody as soon as I get that information with a big APB out there. But there are actually a few of them in the Louvre. The ones of those 75 original ones, a few of them are in the Louvre. There's also a few more scattered around France. There is a museum in the north that has 14 of them, and I'm going to go there just so I could see them.
Oh my gosh.
I'm obsessed with them. But these are the ones that there's two of by Charles Le Brun that are in Notre Dame, were in Notre Dame. But they will all be coming back. In the very first chapel on the right, as you come in, there was one that is the stoning of Saint Etienne. That was the May of 1651. And then the other one is the crucifixion of Saint Andre. That was the May of 1647. The one of the crucifixion of Saint Andre, which is Saint Andrew. Saint Andrew, as we know, like if you know the Scottish flag, and it was the cross of Saint Andrew where it's at X. Saint Andre was going to be killed, and he said that he wanted to be placed on a cross, but he didn't want it to be the same cross as Christ. So, as what we think of as a cross. So they did this X, and they attached his body on it. And so this painting is really interesting because St. Andrew is basically he's not attached to the cross. There's no cross in the painting, but he has his arms and legs up, apart, and spread like he would be on the cross. And it is said that he didn't even need to be tied or nailed to the cross. His body just magically attached it to the cross.
Of course.
So LeBron painted that. He was just 28 years old when he did it.
Wow. He's a baby.
I mean, some of these artists that have accomplished a million things and then died when they were 37 is sometimes just astounding, because I don't know anybody at that age that would be able to do all that they did.
It really makes you feel like a loser.
I know. You're like, wow, what have I been doing? But these paintings are really great. Both of these, especially the Saint Etienne one, was very difficult to see. I will put pictures up. I am so happy that I had spent hundreds of hours inside Notre Dame, basically cataloging every square inch of that place, taking pictures of every piece of art and statue, and making notes of what is in every single chapel. And now I am so happy that I did that, because we're not supposed to be able to get in, hopefully on April 16th, 2024, 5 years and a day since the fire. They're hoping to have Notre Dame open for Mass. They'll do a Mass that day. They just had a meeting this week, and the diocese is actually talking about trying to put some more modern things inside the interior, like light up benches that can move and things. And I'm not down with that. Put it back to the way it was. And so hopefully all of these paintings go back, all of the, the art and the statues, that I hope has to go back just like it was.
Well, we're hoping for that too. I mean, I like the oldie but a goodie, keep it the same.
Some things don't need to be changed over time.
Yeah, exactly. I think the French are pretty good at that.
Yeah, but you could go see those and many more. I had a list of about 20 different paintings to talk about, but as for a matter of time, so we'll probably have to do another one of these another time about more of the paintings. But these are artists that you could see in the Louvre, and you could see, pay for a ticket and stand around with people. A lot of the times, some of the churches don't even have these things even, with a plaque. So you don't even know that what you're looking at is by some great master in history.
Well, now you do, because we have Claudine to teach us. Well, guys, make sure you join Claudine for her virtual walks every Sunday. There's more information about that and everything we just talked about on her website, ClaudineHemingway.com. And don't forget to tune in next week.
Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.